What's up guys, this is Justin here coming to you today from Manila, Philippines, and the title of this video is Should You Move to Phoenix, Arizona? I've lived in Phoenix, Arizona prior to coming to the Philippines for about 9, almost 10 years, and I learned a lot about it, and I've got 11 talking points to help you understand if it is a state in the United States that you would like to basically live in long term. And I think what I have to share with you is really going to help you understand whether or not it's going to be the best possible match for basically what you're looking for. Alright, so what is there actually to do in your spare time when you're not working at your job or building your business when you're living in Arizona? There's tons of stuff to do. I'm going to give you a list of some things I've done and stuff that a lot of people do that's simply a lot of fun. There's a lot of zoos that you can check out there. There's tons of hiking trails locally in the area. There's great day trips like the Grand Canyon. You can go to the Grand Canyon. You can do the Camelback Mountain hike, which is what I did on the thumbnail of this video, which is fun. You can go to Sedona, which is a beautiful red rock place, which is about 3 hours from Phoenix. It's a beautiful day trip to check out. It's a really nice, interesting little town. You can go to Flagstaff, which is about 2 to 2.5 hours north of Phoenix. It's beautiful. There's blue skies just like Phoenix, but there's also these large green trees, and it snows there. So if you want to go on a skiing trip in the winter, you can go up there and you can ski or snowboard for the day, or go up there for a weekend and rent a cabin and come back to the sunshine part of the state. So half of the state, the north side of the state, does get snow and still simultaneously has blue skies at the same time, and the air is cold and crisp in the 30s, and it's awesome that this state can offer all of that because it's like the best of both worlds if it comes to seasons. It's only a 4-hour car drive/trip to Las Vegas. So if you want to head to Las Vegas for a weekend and stay somewhere, head to the casino or just enjoy a different scene. Las Vegas is 4 hours away. San Diego is a 6-hour car ride away. Also, if you just take a flight to Las Vegas or San Diego, it's extremely fast. It's like 45 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes to either one of those locations on a flight. 4 hours to Las Vegas in a car, 6 to 6.5 hours to San Diego in a car. Beautiful trip, by the way. It's a beautiful road trip to do. Horseshoe Bend is a great place to check out. That's a wonderful day trip as well. They have water parks, which who doesn't love water parks? I mean, those are awesome. They also have beautiful indoor and outdoor malls pretty much in every major like sub-city of Phoenix, and Chandler, and in Gilbert, and in of course Scottsdale. There's just really nice indoor and outdoor malls. And I lived in New York the first 21 years of my life, where stuff is just falling apart because it rains and snows there, and it's just like a dark gray sky for 6 months of the year. When you go to Phoenix, it's like going to a different world. It's just like someone came through with a paintbrush and just made everything look beautiful and aesthetically pleasing to your eye. That's like the difference between New York and Arizona. Yeah, so there's just some of the things you can do that I haven't mentioned before. I mean, the nightlife scene's fantastic. You can go hiking. There's an outdoor scene. There's man-made lakes that are beautiful. I've been out on boats on the man-made lakes, like Lake Pleasant, I think it's called. And I think I've been to at least one or maybe two other ones where you can rent a jet ski for a day or get a pontoon boat or whatever, a party boat. And yeah, so there's really not a lot you can't do. If you're someone who doesn't like cloudy or rainy days, then Arizona is going to be for you, especially Phoenix. Basically rains like maybe 5 or 6 days per year, and there's not a lot of clouds in this particular state for whatever reason. They call it the Sunshine State for a reason. It's basically bright and sunny and warm pretty much every day. Also in May, June, July, and August, those 4 months, so about 33% of every calendar year, it's going to be really, really hot. But it's not a big deal because your apartment or house and your vehicle or car is probably going to have air conditioning. So when you're outside, yes, it's hot for those 4 particular months. The other 8 months are very reasonable, ranging from like in the winters, probably lows of maybe 50 to 65, like 50, 60 degrees on the low side for the most part in Phoenix, except for like 3 or 4 in the morning. It might get down to like the 40s. During the day, it's usually 50s, 60s in the winter or better. Sometimes it's the 70s in like January and February, but those other days it's usually like 80s, low 90s, and then just for those 4 months it's hot. So the weather, it's bright, it's sunny, it's warm, and due to that fact, the architecture, the buildings are all like beautifully well kept and maintained in many areas in Phoenix and Chandler and Gilbert and Scottsdale and Glendale. And the reason is because there's very little rain and there's no snow basically. You're not gonna see a lot of the appreciation of the community buildings and pools. Like if you look at a Chase Bank, it's gonna be made out of like this beautiful rock. It's just a very beautifully, aesthetically pleasing to the eye, very, very favorable weather in that respect for this talking point. If those things are important to you, which they were for me, because environment is huge for productivity and just being in a good mood. So that's why I had lived there for 9 years and still might consider going back there someday as well. So hopefully that first talking point will help you understand if it's starting to look like a good fit for you. The next talking point is the general culture, the vibes, the restaurants, and the nightlife. It's hard to beat Phoenix, Arizona, and surrounding areas for the nightlife scene, the overall culture, the overall vibes, and the restaurants. Okay, so we've got Scottsdale, and there is a strip right near the fashion mall in Scottsdale called Old Town. That is a pretty famous place where there is anywhere from like a dozen clubs, where that is just like the scene for Fridays and Saturday nights. And also you can go there and get like food for lunch or dinner at certain times, but there's just like literally a strip or kind of like a U-shaped arc of like 12 clubs or so, and it is extremely busy. Everyone's dressed up and just having a great time, drinking, going in and out of different clubs. It's loud, it's rowdy, people are looking great. It's just a really great nightlife scene for Scottsdale, which is right within Phoenix. Also, downtown Chandler and downtown Gilbert and downtown Phoenix are all beautiful places with beautiful restaurants if you're looking for something a little bit more casual. And also in Tempe as well, near College Town by ASU. That's a great and interesting scene depending on your age. If you're in a little bit of a younger crowd, generally adults that are like in their early 20s usually stick around the Tempe area. If you're in your mid 20s, they usually kind of gravitate, mid to late 20s, they kind of gravitate to Scottsdale. If you're in that range and also in your lower 30s and mid 30s, people kind of go towards more for downtown Gilbert or downtown Chandler in those particular scenes. Nightlife is fantastic. The restaurants are amazing. You can probably try some of the best foods you've ever had in your life. The Fox Concept restaurants are pretty big in Arizona. You've got the Culinary Dropout, you've got North Italia, you've got the Henry, and the list just kind of goes on for the restaurants. So I don't think you're gonna have a lot to dispute when it comes to the food and drinks and level of service you're gonna see here. Their overall culture and the friendliness of people here, I think, is pretty average or neutral. When I go out to eat in restaurants, I usually, depending on where I go, I think everyone is generally very friendly and accommodating and nice. I don't have a high profile or range or standard for judging an entire state or population by metric of how friendly they are, but I would say overall people are nice. It's a nice place to live. I've had very few negative experiences in the general public. I mean, I've had some, okay, but there's so few and such rare, ridiculous incidents that I would say there's like a 97% of the time that you're living in Arizona, you're gonna feel good and feel like you're treated well and feel like things are rock solid. But that's gonna be based off of your situation, like where you choose to live, who your employer is, or if you're self-employed, where you go, who you talk to. But I've talked to so many people, and I'm out in the public all the time in restaurants and just networking events, and I've been treated well and respected, and I can't say enough good things about it. So as far as demographics, so in Phoenix and surrounding areas, like right below Phoenix, we've got Tempe, which is kind of like College Town and ASU. Over in the northwest, we've got Glendale. Then we have North Phoenix, and in the southeast, we've got Mesa, we've got Gilbert, and we've got Chandler. And if you go down even farther, way down south, like 3 hours south, you've got Tucson. As far as the demographics go, it really is going to depend on where you are. If you're like in South Tempe, it's going to be a lot of like younger adults, basically, because it's the Tempe area is right by ASU, and that's generally the vibe there. If you scoot over a little bit to the east, you're going to see more of Mesa, and if you go a little bit south, you're going to see Gilbert and then Chandler. Those are more for that's kind of like the Southeast Valley is one of the nicest places, in my opinion, to buy and invest in real estate and also live and work as a professional, because those areas are just beautiful. The demographics and the people are generally a little bit older, like in their mid to late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s, and they're just like the middle class and the upper middle class, working classes, from what I've noticed. In downtown Phoenix, I've lived there for a while. That's a really interesting vibe. I didn't stay there for longer than 12 months, so I kind of prefer more being in the suburbs than in the downtown city area. But it's like any city, there's like super big buildings, there's like some homeless people there, great restaurants, everything's within walking distance, but I kind of preferred more leaning towards the suburbs. I like Gilbert and Chandler and Mesa. The Northeast Mesa area is also quite beautiful. There's a lot of good stuff going down there. The downtown Gilbert and Chandler areas are just really high class and just classy and nice, and it's a place you're going to want to potentially live and work and be around. Again, the Scottsdale nightlife scene, mid to late 20s, early 30s, mid 30s. That's nice too. You might go through a phase like me where I enjoyed being in that area for a while. I've lived in North Scottsdale, I've lived in Central Scottsdale. I've lived all over the place. I probably lived in 12 different places throughout Arizona at the time I was there. So as far as real estate investing, this is 2022, August of 2022, and I just sold my house, took a gigantic gain on it. It appreciated over the course of 2 years exponentially. I did really well on that. I'm actually potentially considering going back and buying another house and renting it out again and then returning back to where I'm at now over in Philippines. And the real estate investing scene there is fantastic. If you want to be a homeowner, it's probably going to be a very, very good idea. The homeowner's insurance is much lower than some other states. Like, it's way lower than Texas because we don't get hurricanes, we don't get tornadoes, we don't get earthquakes in Arizona. So the homeowner's insurance is simply far less expensive. Property taxes here on average are 0.0061 on a calculator. So it's like very, very reasonable property taxes here. It's less than 1% of what the home's value is across the board in most counties. I'm referring generally to Maricopa, which is the Phoenix area. So property taxes are very, very reasonable and on the lower side of the state. So property taxes are much lower, which means you can afford a more expensive house. Homeowners insurance is a lot lower than some other states, like especially Texas. And so that makes it much easier to afford more of a house. The one downside though is since housing has increased so much in prices, it definitely is going to negate and offset the fact that the property taxes are going to be lower, the home insurance is going to be lower, and the state income tax, there is a state income tax, but it's nowhere near as high as California. It's just like a moderate state income tax, so that's not going to be too big of a deal when comparing to Texas and other states that don't have the state income tax. Overall, to summarize this talking point, the real estate here is fantastic. The houses are generally not as by the weather, but snow and rain, which just siding and just your lawn and everything is just, yeah. So it's a lot easier to maintain your house in Arizona, which is a great reason to buy a house and live in it there. And also buying houses to rent out is also a great idea because, again, it's just the maintenance is a lot easier from those respects. Things are still gonna break in my houses and rentals. I've had pipes burst. The HVAC will go out all the time if it's not a new unit, but just stuff like that is not a huge headache, honestly, to deal with. So business connections, it's very cool here because there's a lot of famous people who live in Phoenix. I've been at the Henry and I've walked by Dean Graziosi before when he was talking to somebody. It was cool. I just kind of waved and he smiled. I didn't want to interrupt him. That's just one example, but I definitely, when I've been in the Scottsdale nightclub scene through different chapters and seasons of my life, and just to reiterate, Dean Graziosi is he's affiliated with Tony Robbins and Russell Brunson and those guys. He's all about real estate. He's a famous author, super mega successful. But I know other people that are not famous and they want it that way, that are multi-millionaires that I've had great conversations with, that I've gotten a chance to network with and actually do some deals with on more than one occasion with other millionaires, which is awesome. So it's just a place where you'll go to your gym and there'll be people there working out, doing the bench press who rolled up in their Ferraris or their Audi R8s or their Rolls Royces, so that's pretty cool. You're not gonna see that in a lot of other places in the United States. From the bigger cities, totally, like New York City, Miami, Los Angeles, you're gonna see that, but it's definitely like that in Phoenix as well. So it's great for business networking. There's also local meetups and events for realtors, for business brokers, and for just all different types of businesses and marketing events. So it's really a fantastic way to identify opportunities. It's a great place to invest in businesses as well because the population is continuously rising, and the more people there are, the higher the demand is for things. That's literally the backbone of almost every business, especially the ones that are physical in nature and have storefronts. The cost of living in Arizona was really good for a long time, unfortunately, because of the 11% inflation we've been experiencing over the course of the past year. Just in general, the rate of rental increases, I think rent has gone up exponentially as well. In fact, I know it has. So the cost of living has gotten worse for Phoenicians or anyone who wants to live in Arizona. But the good news is if you are interested in having roommates and you're renting an apartment, then you can totally crush the cost of your rent by living with one or two or three other people and kind of spreading out those shared costs. And of course, there's Walmarts and there's the Kroger line of stores that have relatively inexpensive groceries. So that's not a big deal. So as far as cost of living goes, it is on the higher side, but it's nowhere near New York City. It's nowhere near Los Angeles. It's nowhere near San Francisco. So for a city, it has been going up and it is getting a little bit tight, a little bit restrictive for a lot of folks who are not in those higher income ranges. However, if you just use a little bit of common sense when it comes to your budgeting, when it comes to eating out, when it comes to groceries, when it comes to how you're going about your rent, you can totally make it worth it and totally make it worth your while. Traffic overall is not horrible. Again, traffic's not going to be anywhere near as bad as Los Angeles or some other cities in the United States, but during rush hour traffic in downtown Phoenix at like 5 o'clock, of course, it's going to be horrible if you're in that exact situation. But if you're traveling in the morning or the afternoon or late at night, you're kind of missing that giant window. Most of the time when you're taking the 60 or the 202 or the 101, there's generally not too many traffic jams where you have to actually literally stop. Because Arizona is growing drastically in population since the California exodus during the COVID era pandemic that was going on last year and the year before, traffic has gotten worse, but it is tolerable. And honestly, unless you're commuting to your job every day, which is going to be probably most people, you can try to live closer to where you work to make your commute a lot less. You don't have to deal with traffic. You can also have your groceries shipped to you from Target or Instacart through Sprouts or Walmart if you don't want to go get your groceries. And there's other ways to mitigate you having to deal with traffic, but most of the time, traffic's not bad. I don't think it should be a deal breaker for anyone to consider. So the next talking point, how is it for employment opportunities and work? Honestly, Phoenix is one of the best in the United States for working, for getting a job. The local economy and the gross domestic product is thriving and kicking butt big time, majorly in Arizona, which means, in other words, there are a lot of local businesses looking for people. There's a lot of bigger companies like Vanguard, which is a finance and investing company, American Express, I think another one's called Honey, if I'm not mistaken, Honeywell maybe, yeah, Honeywell. There is just a multitude of large corporations here. You've got the airplane company, Boeing, I think, is based here as well. They have a giant place here. In a nutshell, a ton of employment opportunities here. You can even, the ride hailing services like Uber or Lyft, you're gonna make decent to higher levels of money. I think if you do a full-time Uber or Lyft driver, you can make between 40 and 60 grand per year, which is not something you're gonna be able to do in other cities in the United States if you wanted to do something like that. There's a lot of just really, the business opportunities here are fantastic for local businesses. If you wanna buy or invest in a franchise, and that's because the population is growing. People are actively building, the builders building more houses to accommodate more people coming into the state. So it's a thriving state, to be perfectly honest. It's a great place to work and it's a solid place to live. Next talking point, the cost of cars is high. If you ever buy a car in Arizona, I would try to buy it not from a dealership because cars here are expensive. The dealerships here look like mega malls for most of the parts. There's smaller dealers as well, which is what I tried to find if I'm gonna buy from a dealer that don't have like a mega mall looking type place. So obviously you're going to be spending an extra $5,000 and you can negotiate all day long if you want to. Believe me, I've been there, I've done that. And they will eventually, after 8 hours, give you a little, like 5% of what you were asking for most of the time, unless you know something I don't, but I consider myself a pretty good negotiator and I have the patience. But anyway, my point with cars is simple. Try to buy from a private seller if you possibly can. The cars here are expensive. Like I bought my last car from a completely different state and shipped it here because that same car in Arizona would have been an extra $5,000 to $10,000. I'm completely serious. The only difference was geography, like where the hell the car was being sold. So this isn't a rule that applies in every situation. I'm thinking this is a rule that's going to apply like 95% of the time. All right, this has been Justin Spencer, and I hope this helps you understand if living and working and thriving potentially in Phoenix, Arizona is going to be the right fit for you. If you got any value out of this video at all, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. On this channel, I talk about business, I talk about finance, investing, and I talk about traveling throughout the world and living in various places. All right, this has been Justin Spencer. Bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.